Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia Chi. I'm the Senior Strategist with Just Solutions Collective, and I work on providing policy analysis to support BIPOC frontline environmental justice groups around the country. Most programs in the law do not meaningfully prioritize environmental justice communities, and there's little that addresses the legacy of cumulative pollution burdens in these communities. Just Solutions Collective collaborated with the Climate and Clean Energy Equity Fund previously on identifying what are the 7 key components for an equitable transition. And those are: environmental justice communities must be identified and prioritized, environmental burdens must decrease in environmental justice communities, energy burdens of families with lower incomes should be reduced, there must be opportunities for environmental justice communities and households to own renewable energy, clean energy jobs must be prioritized for environmental justice communities and communities transitioning away from fossil fuels. Resilience measures for environmental justice communities should be prioritized, and there must be a safe and affordable transition away from fossil fuels. Overall, the Inflation Reduction Act does not meaningfully incorporate these components, which means that transition to this cleaner economy may worsen the health and economic burdens that are already borne by those who live in environmental justice communities. We included the programs in the law that we thought were most likely to actually benefit environmental justice communities and the residents of those communities without a lot of extra intervention. So that means we included provisions that have mandatory carve-outs or other kind of targeting for underserved, low-income, or disadvantaged communities. And we also included all funding for tribal nations and insular areas and other justice-oriented programs that acknowledge and attempt to address harms. We didn't include provisions that have non-mandatory options for spending on underserved, low-income, or disadvantaged communities. So there are some programs that aren't included in our total that could be used to benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities, but probably will end up requiring extra resources to do the advocacy to ensure that it actually gets to them. Likewise, we didn't include targeting for low and moderate income homeowners, primarily because most residents of environmental justice communities are renters and wouldn't benefit from those same incentives. And we think that within the low and moderate income homeowner category, these incentives are mostly going to benefit the moderate income and not the low income. We also didn't include funding for general government permitting and oversight activities. While those are really important activities and the spending and investment in those activities is very much needed, we didn't count them as an environmental justice because they don't necessarily benefit environmental justice communities. So there's no one uniform definition of disadvantaged communities throughout the whole law, and it varies by program. And some of the programs specify targeting low income or disadvantaged communities. Some just say low income, some say disadvantaged communities, but then don't define it. So that just means that it'll be complicated to implement, hard for communities to understand how they will benefit, and that none of them necessarily prioritize environmental justice communities, depending on how the agencies decide to interpret that. It's important to keep in mind that a future presidential administration can come in and interpret disadvantaged communities in different ways if it's not clearly defined in the law. So some important parts of the law that will be implemented by the Department of Treasury that the environmental justice community should really have their comments prioritized in how they implement them include some of the definitions and determinations that the Treasury Department will have to make about what counts as an energy community, what counts as a qualified low-income economic benefit project, which projects get prioritized for the environmental justice solar and wind capacity limitation, as well as feedback and input on wage and apprenticeship requirements, and the emissions rates for facilities under the technology neutral sections of the tax credit. Other parts of the bill that are going to be implemented by the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Act should also center the voices and needs of environmental justice communities. And these programs also largely have an implementation step at the state level as well. So we encourage groups and governments to talk about how they can best maximize equity at that level as well. That includes the home energy performance-based whole house rebates and high efficiency electric home rebate programs, which can be implemented in a way that reach more renters and low-income people. At the EPA, there are a lot of programs that will be implemented by states, including the Clean Heavy-Duty Vehicles program, grants to reduce air pollution at ports, and funding to address air pollution at schools. There's also the National Green Bank program, which is called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, that has $27 billion total in it, including $15 billion that is targeted for disadvantaged communities. So we really hope that the EPA and then the states that implement that program really look to environmental justice leaders in helping to implement that in a way that really benefits those communities. The most important thing to know about the Inflation Reduction Act is that the work is not over. A lot of the details of how the law is implemented still need to be filled in at both the federal and state levels. The Inflation Reduction Act missed a lot of valuable opportunities to ensure that the transition to an economy based on clean, renewable energy is equitable and just. Frontline communities' voices must be centered by federal agencies and state governments as they're implementing the law and coming up with guidance.